Hi there, Booktube. Long time no see. Well, only about 3 weeks actually, but feels like ages because 2 weeks ago, when I was about to kind of record and upload a video, I slipped over on wet grass and broke my kind of arm, shoulder, and it turns out that if you break your arm bone just below the shoulder joint, they can't put it in a cast, and it's really painful, and it knocks you out for a couple of weeks. So I'm finally compass enough, alert enough to make a video again. So hi, and it's possible that I'll be a tiny bit more rambly and clumsy than usual, but I will try not to be. So I'm pushing myself, though, to make a video today because it's very nearly the end of March, and I really want to do a video about my plans for April because it's People April, which I'm hosting. So, I need to talk about that, don't I? And so in this video, I'm going to recap what People April is, our April readathon. I'm going to talk about what I'm planning to read, my sort of possibilities, and I'm also going to mention some other reading events that are happening in April. The Disability Readathon, Picture This, TransGirl April and Alcott in April, and how things I'm picking to read kind of connect with some of those as well. So let's get stuck in. First, quick refresher of what's People April all about. It's about reading non-fiction writing about people. So biography, memoir, letters, diaries, autobiographical poetry, biographical picture books, graphic memoirs, biographical essays. The world's your oyster, and you can get stuck in and read loads for it, or you could read, one letter, one diary entry. To that end, I'm going to mention a really tremendous resource, or two websites called Letters of Note and Diaries of Note. They're both curated, written by a UK writer called Shaun. Oh, what's the surname? His brain's only semi-functioning. Too many painkillers. Shaun Usher. That's right. And on Letters of Note, he's got just all kinds of letters by people through history, through time, that you can search for on different themes, or just pick randomly. And some of them have been collected into books, of which more later. And the other side, Diaries of Note, is something he did in 2023, and he did a diary entry, not his diary, a page from someone's diary from the past for each day of the year. So, something that someone wrote in their diary for the 1st of January, he sort of posted on the 1st of January. So there's like a complete 365-day collection. So, if you want to just dip in, I'll leave the details in the description, and I'll mention both again as I talk about my choices. So, as any good readathon should, we've got a group read. The book that was chosen, and which is sort of number one book on my TBR for April, is I Am by Maggie O'Farrell. And Maggie O'Farrell is a novelist. That's what she's known for. But this is her memoir with a difference, is how it's often described, because it's about her 17 brushes with death. Which sounds curious, but apparently it's both sort of scary and life-affirming, and she's a brilliant writer. So, and one thing that's made me really happy since the vote happened and this book was chosen is that obviously there's been lots of people saying, oh yes, I'm going to join in and read it, but there's also been a load of people who've said, well, actually I've already read it, but what a good choice because I really enjoyed it. So it comes sort of recommended by lots of booktubers and booktube commenters. So there you go. The details of the group read schedule are on our People April Discord server. Discord, if you don't know it, is free. I'll put an invitation below in the show notes. It's really easy to use once you get used to it. Initially, you think, oh, this looks complicated, but it's not. It's really simple. And do join. And you can join to talk about the group read, but also anything else, give your TBR, give people recommendations about books about people, or things to read about people, talk about how you're going to meet the prompts, any of that. There's also a challenge on Storyograph, courtesy of Amelia, who set that up for us, where you can again record how you meet the prompts, and yes, if you're doing the group read. So I'll put a link to that as well. So let's get on to those prompts. Now I've just got to bend down and pick up my notebook where I've written them down so I get the words right, and it's a bit uncomfortable bending, so bear with 1 second. It's not bending, it's just like keeping the arm in the right position. Okay, so very, very flexible prompts. In keeping with the theme, they are quotations by people. Obviously quotations. Who could you quote other than, well, AI, I suppose. Anyway, we won't go there. The first prompt is, biography should be written by an acute enemy, by Arthur Balfour. And the second is, I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train, by Oscar Wilde. And please interpret those as loosely and creatively as you like, and I'm going to explain how I am and my picks for those. Linking to the first prompt for me, okay, the first thing that I'm reading into the first prompt is this: Missing Persons or My Grandmother's Secrets by Clair Wills. So this is a biography, or a family biography, I suppose, would be how to describe it. And obviously Clair Wills is not her grandmother's enemy, but what she does do is kind of dig into her grandmother's dark secrets, I guess, and how it came to be that she had a cousin that she never knew about, who was born in a mother and baby home, the notorious, Ireland's notorious mother and baby home system, and Magdalene laundries and orphanages have come up so often in fiction, Irish fiction these days, because it's kind of like a national scandal that's kind of gradually been unearthed or come to be spoken about. And it's going to be really interesting to read a non-fiction book about that and about its implications in one Irish family. And this is newly out in 2024, and so I'll let you know how I find it. If any of you've already read it, do tell me more. And so that links to biography and not enemy exactly, but that implication of telling the truth, perhaps, as a biographer, rather than hagiography. You a sort of great person, how wonderful they were sort of approach to biography, which I think is what the Arthur Balfour quote sort of implies. And that is the link to my second choice for this prompt, and that's Normal Women, 900 Years of Making History by Philippa Gregory. Now, Philippa Gregory, again, is known best as a novelist. She writes historical fiction. The Other Boleyn Girl was one of her sort of big hits, I suppose. It's good stuff. It's sort of generic historical fiction, but she gets her historical context right because she's got a sort of academic background in history. And what she sets out to do in this book is the antithesis of the great man style or great style of biography. But then also she says she's also almost reacting against the sort of the more recent sort of her story style of women's history, that it produces books about 10 inspiring women or 20 women who changed the world or whatever, because this is about everyday women throughout English history and their lives and their names and what they did. So it's a big fat tome. I'm really looking forward to it. It's the sort of thing that I wouldn't want to rush. I will start it in April, but it may carry on over the next couple of months for me. It's not the sort of thing you read all in one go. I'll put that down. Oh, the other reason is because reading heavy physical books at the moment can be a bit uncomfortable. So I have to be in the right position to read them. So and turn the pages. But I will get to it. Now, the third choice for this prompt for me is the one that I'm least likely to get to. This one is more of a possibility than a definite sort of TBR. And that is this, The Facemaker by Lindsey Fitzharris. It's a biography about a surgeon, or I'll find his name, Harold Gillies, that's it, a New Zealand surgeon who did groundbreaking work in rebuilding people's faces in World War One. Fascinating topic, but Tilly read this first, and from what she said, I have a feeling it may fall slightly into that sort of the style of biography that really sort of focuses on the individual hero figure, and that's maybe not my favourite. So I'm interested in the topic, but it's probably sort of bottom of that pile, if that makes sense. But if you've read it and you think that's unfair, do say. And it might move up the pile. So that was prompt number one. Prompt number two, the Oscar Wilde prompt. Well, obviously the obvious thing to read for a quote about taking your diary to read on the train is diaries. And what I plan to do is to use the Diaries of Note website that I mentioned and read the entry there for each day in April. So what the somebody's diary entry for that day in April that's been picked to be on that site. Oh, I'm explaining that really badly because of broken arm, painkiller brain, but I think you understand what I mean. So I'm looking forward to that. And if you fancy joining me in doing that, do, and mention it on the Discord server or in the comments. I think that will be intriguing. The second choice that I'm making for this prompt is sort of off on a different tangent, because when we think of Oscar Wilde, there are certain things we think about for him. The fact that he was a queer writer, but also the fact that he wrote a lot of really, really funny material. Things like The Importance of Being Earnest, some of the best humorous writing in the English language. And so I'm going to read the memoir by a stand-up comedian called Fern Brady. It's called Strong Female Character. It was on lots of the sort of best non-fiction of 2023 lists at the end of the year. It's not about being a stand-up comedian, really. It's about growing up as a undiagnosed autistic woman, and it's meant to be very honest, both funny and quite tough. It comes highly recommended. So I'm particularly looking forward to that one. It's also my crossover read for the Disability Readathon, which is again in April. It's hosted by Erin Hawley and Anna Goldberg. I'll leave some kind of details below for you to find it. A lot of the stuff about it so far is on Instagram, but there will be things on Booktube as well. And there's a website with sort of recommendations on it, so I'll make sure I link to that. Choice number 2 for this prompt is sort of memoir, sort of biography, sort of different and interesting. It's called Thunderclap, and it's just been picked for the shortlist for the Women's Prize for non-fiction, their first non-fiction prize they've done, and it was on the long list. It's now on the shortlist. Its full title, if I give you that, will explain why I've chosen it for this prompt. So, Thunderclap, a memoir of art and life and sudden death. Well, that sounds sensational, doesn't it? And that's the other bit of the quote, something sensational to read on the train. And, what could be more sensational, in theory, than a book that is based around an explosion that took place in 17th century Delft in what's now the Netherlands, and which killed the Dutch painter Karel Fabricius, who painted the Goldfinch and other paintings, and it's about the author Laura Cummings and her father and their shared love of art. So that's that one. Then I have a third choice for this prompt, but one of the things that I've really developed a taste for, an enthusiasm for in the last sort of few years is graphic memoir, autobiographical comics. And I'm going to read a couple of those this month. And the first of those is this one, Welcome to Hell, My Trans Teen Misadventure. So this links to this prompt because, it's a queer author, or in this case trans, but that is brilliant because it means it's my TransGirl April choice as well. And TransGirl April is hosted by Say Kevy. I'll put the link. Kevy's doing it in a slightly more sort of low-key way this year, but really encouraging us to read something by a trans author in April, and this is it for me. So it's I can't sort of do the usual thing of opening and showing you the style very well because I'm working one-handed, but my understanding of it is that it's Lewis Hancox, the author, is kind of looking back at his childhood and kind of speaking to his former self and telling her how he sort of knows what she's going through, but how things come through. He comes through as an adult, and so it's sort of both heart-wringing and but also kind of ultimately optimistic, perhaps. We'll see. The second one I don't have yet. It's waiting for me at the library, and this doesn't link to one of the prompts. That's my prompt choices sort of done with. But it's another autobiographical comic. It's Ducks: 2 Years in the Oil Sands by Kate Beaton. Now, this one is one that has been strongly recommended to me by Lindsey of Lindsey Magpie Reads and a number of others actually, and it's and it won the Canada Reads competition in 2023. It's quite new, and it's, as I understand it from Lindsey's reviews and others, a kind of hard-hitting memoir about Beaton's experience as a woman working in the oil sands, the oil industry of Alberta. She was trying to pay off her student loans. It's kind of a very sort of male-dominated industry and society, and lots of migrant workers, lots of, a very challenging environment for her to have worked in, and also threw up sort of moral dilemmas around sort of environmental damage and Indigenous rights and so on. Anyway, so sounds like a rich and interesting experience, that one. Now, I'm going to read a third comic or graphic work, but this one is biography rather than memoir. And it's Why She Wrote by Hannah Chapman, Lauren Burke and Kaley Bales. And I'll tell you the sort of subtitle or the full title. So, Why She Wrote: A Graphic History of the Lives, Inspiration and Influence Behind the Pens of Classic Women Writers. So I think that pretty much describes it pretty clearly, doesn't it? It's 18 women writers and sort of like vignettes of their lives to telling you some things that I think probably I may already know, about Jane Austen or whatever, and others that will be less familiar. And one of the reasons why I chose that is because one of the 18 writers that it features is Louisa May Alcott, and there is an Alcott in April readathon going on. Again, I'll link to the hosts and so on. And I thought it would be nice to just sort of have a little tiny touch of Alcott in my month. I've got another little tiny touch to come. So that's the three kind of graphical comic books. But there is a readathon this month. This is the second or third year that it's run, called Picture This, which is not about graphic or comic books, but about picture books, very distinctly, like the host specifically say, no, not, this is not where you read a graphic novel or whatever. This is about actual picture books and relishing and appreciating those. Jack of Spread Bookjoy and Shelley Swearingen explain this much better than I can, so I'll link to those. But I really wanted to take part in that and find a crossover with People April, and Jack suggested one for me, and that's this, The Dam, by David Almond, and illustrated by Levi Pinfold. Beautiful illustrations, which I would like to, I'll just about manage to show you. You get a flavour. It also fits People April because it's about the Kielder Valley in the north of England was evacuated so that it could be flooded to be used as a reservoir, and two musicians, Mike and Catherine Tickell, folk musicians, went to the valley just before the dam was shut off, as it were, and played music in every empty house in the valley to sort of bring life back to them for one last time. And what a beautiful idea. So true story, so biographical, but a picture book. I may pick up some more biographical or autobiographical picture books in the month if I can get into my library, which at the moment I can't, and do a bit of browsing. So now, one thing I think about this that I think this will have is a really strong sense of place. And the next book on my TBR is very much about sense of place, I think. It's called A Flat Place by Noreen Masud. It's on the Women's Prize for Non-Fiction shortlist, as it happens. So it's a new book. It's one of those books that is hard to categorise because it's a combination of nature writing and travel writing and memoir. It addresses Masud's experience of having PTSD and how but through visiting parts of the UK, like the flat places, like the Fens or Morecambe Bay, and how that speaks to her and helps her manage her feelings, but also bringing in kind of like history and culture, and just my sort of thing. I'm very hopeful that I will enjoy it a lot. So that's the last of my sort of memoir-y sort of books, but I was quite keen, as I say, to get in some letters into this People April, and I was aware of the Letters of Note website, and that some actual books have emerged from that, and starting in about 2020, they've brought out a series of kind of collections of letters on a theme. And the one I picked is Letters of Note Mothers. So it's a collection of letters, all sorts of letters from, an ancient one written on papyrus right up to, close to the present day, that are by children to their mothers or about their mothers, or by mothers to their children or about their children. And I've picked to read it as an audiobook because it's got the most tremendous, these collections, what they do is they get really brilliant selection of actors to voice the letters. They also do it as a live show, apparently. It sounds like a lovely way to fit some letters into my month. So I think I'm kind of demonstrating the range of different types of book that you can read for People April. And the last of my sort of People April choices is a book of poetry by David Jones. It's called In Parenthesis. It was lovely. I love these Faber editions. They're very elegant, aren't they? It was first published in 1937. It's based on his experience in the First World War. It's often with poetry, kind of autobiographical poetry, it sort of it's less directly or obviously autobiographical, but still is. I'm not explaining that well, am I? I'll let David Jones explain it better. Okay, so he says, none of the characters in this writing are real persons, nor is any sequence of events historically accurate. But they're all based on, each person and every event are free reflections of people and things remembered. So they're real, but then sort of transposed through poetry into what is written in this. And it's a modernist classic. It's sort of somewhere between a sort of novel in poetry and a poetic novel, but as I say, all based on real events and real people, but then kind of wrapped into given a sort of a fictional poetry wrapping. It's the sort of book that I think you don't read in a hurry, so I will start it in April, but I will expect it to, I'll spread it over like 2 or 3 months probably. So that's everything that I plan to read for People April. I've got 2 other things that I'm going to read in April, which, as it happens, are kind of like People April adjacent, shall we say. One of those is Human Acts by Hancox, which I'm buddy reading with Ian Powell, who's a tremendous BookTube commenter. And I say that's People April adjacent because although it's a novel, it's based on real events. It's based on 1980s democratization sort of uprising in Korea. Meant to be quite hard-hitting again. I loved The Vegetarian. I loved Greek Lessons. So it's my 3rd Hancock and I'm really looking forward to it. And the other novel that I will be finishing in April is Of Human Bondage. I've read the first half of that in March. I'm reading the second half in April with a group of people led by Shaun the Book Maniac as a kind of a group read. And it's by William Somerset Maugham. It's probably seen as his greatest novel, although his short stories are possibly even greater. But it's recognised to be strongly autobiographical in character. So, as I say, People April adjacent. So that's my People April. Slightly crazy quantities, but lots of them. They've got picture books, graphic novels, letters. I mean, I think most of it will get read, or at least that everything will be started, and some of it I'll reserve to sort of roll over into further months. I would love to hear what you think of my choices or what you're planning to read in the comments, or better still, join the Discord server and share there, and roll on a lovely April and roll on less pain and more videos.